A worrying decline in Southeast Asians' perception of climate change as an immediate or serious threat to the well-being of their nations. That's according to the latest survey by the ICE's Yusof Ishak Institute. 49% of respondents placed climate change at the highest level of urgency. It's a marked decline from the almost 70% of those surveyed in 2021. Despite that, most view climate change as an important issue that deserves to be monitored. ICE says the drop in urgency of climate change as a threat may be linked to the region's economic concerns, which include rising energy and food prices. The majority of Southeast Asians agree on fossil fuel subsidies needing to be reduced. Fossil fuels make up more than 80% of the region's energy mix. And most respondents believe that to accelerate the transition to clean energy, ASEAN should prioritize the development of energy infrastructure. The survey notes that climate ambition has grown in the region, but only about a quarter of Southeast Asians think that their governments are giving enough attention to the threat of climate change. Sharon Seah from the ICE's Yusof Ishak Institute explains the possibilities and challenges ASEAN nations could face in developing regional energy infrastructure.
The development of regional energy infrastructures are actually technically feasible, but we need a harmonization of markets, grid codes, and agreements on wheeling charges, which remain a challenge. And also, not to forget, political trust is really needed to develop these cross-border grids. But I think the region is slowly moving towards this realization of an ASEAN power grid, and the challenges can be overcome through coordination and, again, very high levels of political commitment. So the main drivers of these cross-border grids are actually mutual economic and environmental benefits, and also the advantage of increased energy security, which can be very attractive in a scenario where we find sudden disruptions like what we experienced when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. So I think this idea of developing an ASEAN Power Grid 2.0 using renewable energy is really going to, take root, and it really bears a lot more discussion. But of course, I have to say that infrastructure requires a great deal of financing. I don't think governments can do it alone without the private sector. So it has to be a very clever mix of blended financing, some help from the multilateral banks, and also importantly, a harmonization, as I mentioned earlier, of our markets.